This recording will cover Chapter 9 in your textbook, Assessing and Teaching Writing and Spelling. How many of you are dreading spelling? I don't know, it seems like a lot of people don't like spelling. But here are some learning outcomes. Of course, identify assessment instructional practices associated with improved writing outcomes for students with learning behavior problems, critical features of spelling assessments, and characteristics of students with handwriting problems. Ooh, we do not want to talk about my handwriting, and identify the components of effective handwriting and keyboarding programs. So, of course, we want to think about, teaching and assessing the writing process. So, for the students or for your students with learning and behavior problems, you want to think about the setting, like what is your atmosphere in your classroom when you're teaching writing. You want to allow independence or promote independence, but also allow students to interact. So I want you to look on in figure 9.2, and I have it here for you. So just thinking about, creating an atmosphere that is similar to a studio, create an atmosphere in which students can interact easily, create an atmosphere that encourages independence. So, there might be some writing carols, there might be some tables where they can work together, some round tables, some rectangle tables, whatever you have, some other carols. There might be one of those, U-shaped tables or kitty-shaped tables where you can do some small group instruction in writing. They might have access to the computers. There might be a whole set of your bookshelves of just writing supplies, and then there might be some folders, stuff like that. So thinking about how you can create this stage or this studio-like atmosphere. When you are teaching the writing process. Also, you could think about individual writing folders, and have something like this: pieces I've written, skills I've mastered, ideas to write about, that they could kind of just keep up with as something interesting happens. Oh, I want to write about this. And maybe if they have some areas of expertise, right? If they think they're really good in some certain areas, let them write it down. And then there are some sample spelling forms for the individual writing folders as well, excuse me. So this could be a little strategy. Here's the word. I wrote it on a card. I practiced using a strategy. I learned it for the test. Oh, I learned it in writing, and here's the date. So all of these things, are in your textbook, of course, which is again why I keep using this textbook, because I do like the ideas. So you want to think about, again, scheduling, preparing materials. We just talked about that as well. Teaching writing conventions, which include spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and grammar. So again, especially your students who might struggle, right, with these learning and behavior problems, they're going to need explicit instruction in these critical elements. They're going to need instruction explicitly in writing conventions. That does not inhibit their writing, right? So just kind of letting them write. And then adequate time to write with scaffolding and feedback. Of course, we have to talk about response to intervention. Remember RTI or MTS squared. And students with some of your students with extreme writing challenges, they might be moved into kind of a tier 2 for writing. Maybe they get 20 minutes. And then if they still fail to respond, maybe some extra instruction. Maybe you move them to tier 3. And this right now, this is talking about about written expression, not handwriting right now. Okay, so we're talking about actual written expression. And you can maintain samples of their writing to determine if adequate progress has occurred, because of course, as we've talked about in all the other chapters, we need to monitor our students' progress, not just once every 9 weeks or something like that, right? Especially your students who struggle, you're going to monitor them maybe every 2 weeks, or maybe even for some students every week, or maybe, like I said, every other week, something like that. You can evaluate their written products. You can observe how they write. So maybe you would pull them back to that C-shaped or that U-shaped table that we saw in the figure a few minutes ago, and watch their writing process, see what they do. And then, of course, curriculum-based measures. We've talked about CBM in other areas. So CBMW is curriculum-based measures of writing, and you would score them on some standardized prompts. I'm going to show you examples of some prompts in just a second. So for written expression, you can score. There are multiple ways that you can score. So going back to what I said about what was it, reading comprehension, those maze exams, and I said, well, I think they're on 1 minute, but they might be on 3 minutes. Whatever you do, just make sure it's the same, right? So if you use TWW, which is total words written, on one assessment, you're going to want to use that the next week and the next week and the next week. If you use words spelled correctly, WSC, you're going to want to continuously use that. And you could use multiple methods, right? Like let's say you want to know how many words they've written total and how many words they spelled correctly. You could certainly use both methods. Just make sure to remember, TWW is one set of numbers and WSC is this other set of numbers, just to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. Okay, and then there's also some things called correct writing sequences or correct written sequences, which is the number of thought units or ideas expressed. I'm going to show you that in just a second as well. You could also use a rubric. Right, a lot of teachers use rubric for writings. There's checklists that you could use, and you could make sure to provide feedback on a target skill. Maybe they're working on finding the main idea or providing supporting details. So you could target your feedback to those skills. All right, so let's look at some sample written expression prompts, and these are based off of 3 minutes. So this you could do, written expression, you could do for the whole class, right? So you could say, okay, I'm going to put a prompt, and you would only give them one, right? When I taught this face-to-face, I would give options and I would let the students choose one. But for your purposes, you would give them the same prompt. So you would say, okay, here's your prompt. I couldn't fall asleep in my tent. I heard this noise outside, and then you give them time to brainstorm. You set your clock, you give them time to brainstorm, you read it again, and then you say, okay, I'm going to start my timer, and I want you to write as much as you can for 3 minutes. All right, so they're going to go right on the prompt, do 3 minutes. Okay, time's up, put your pencil down, collect it. Then when you want to think about grading or scoring those, you can think about the methods that they discussed a few minutes ago. Total words written, okay, which is simply how many words did they write? Just how many words, okay? The next one is correct writing sequences, or CWS, which means number of thought units or ideas expressed, and it really should say correctly because they have to have appropriate punctuation, appropriate capital letters, stuff like that. I'll show you that in just a second. And then the other way is words spelled correctly, which is, of course, what it sounds like, words spelled correctly. You just count the number of words spelled correctly. Okay, so keep these in mind: total words written, correct writing sequences, and words spelled correctly. And again, those are based on 3 minutes. So here are some examples. All right, so I want you to think about, for this one right here, this first one, I want you to think about total words written. The cat, raw, away, the sky is blue. All right, so I want you to kind of in your mind count how many quote unquote words they wrote, okay? All right, so the next one is correct writing sequences. Okay, so in this one, I want you to think about, it's the same sentence, right? I want you to think about, is there a capital letter here? Okay, and we're going to assume that there was a period right here, right, or punctuation. So this T, there's a capital letter. The cat, R-A, away, period, space, capital, the sky is blue, period. So think about how you would grade this for correct writing sequences. And remember, correct writing sequences means appropriate spacing, capital letter, punctuation, and the words are spelled correctly. And what you do is you kind of count on each side. And I'll show you what it looks like in just a second. You count. I'll show you in just a second. Hold on. Okay. And then the last one, the cat, R-A, away, the sky is blue, no punctuation, knows that. And so this one, this third method is words spelled correctly. All right. So just kind of take a second, think about how you would score each of these. So total words written, correct writing sequences, words spelled correctly. All right, so let's look at the next one. All right, so this is total words written. The cat, R-A, it's a group of letters, right? It doesn't say the word has to be correct. Away, the sky is blue. So how many did you get? 8, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so that one's pretty straightforward. Doesn't measure anything about if they have punctuation, if the word, quote unquote, was spelled correctly. It's just how many kind of groups of letters do they have? All right, so in that case, it's 8. So then the next one is correct writing sequences. And this one is a little, it's a little tricky, but this is the one that I always used to use. So what you do, you would look, pretend again, we're going to assume there's a period or punctuation here. So you have a punctuation and a capital letter. Is that sequence correct? Is that a correct writing sequence? Yes. So you give a little caret or a little star or whatever you want. The and cat, okay, are those two words spelled correctly? Do they make sense? Yes, that's a correct writing sequence. Put a little cat. Cat, R-A, away. Is that correct? No, it's not, right? Because RA is not a word. So you cannot count this sequence, cat, RA, you cannot count that as a correct writing sequence. Okay, what about RA away? Well, we already know it's not going to be a sequence because RA is not spelled correctly. All right, so not correct. Then what about away period? Is that correct? Well, away is spelled correctly. There's punctuation. So yeah, that's correct. I'll give it a little caret. Okay, then you go from the punctuation to the capital letter. And is the word spelled correctly? I didn't say that over here, sorry. So punctuation, yep, and the word is there's capital. So yeah, that is a correct writing sequence. Okay, what about the sky? Hopefully you're already starting to say, nope, sky is spelled incorrectly. So that is not a correct writing sequence. So you don't give them any little caret. Oh, so then you're going to know sky is that correct? Nope, that's spelled incorrectly. So you can't count that. What about is blue? Well, yeah, is spelled correctly, blue is spelled correctly. Okay, that's fine. Give them a little caret. And then blue to punctuation. Sky is blue. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, they get a little caret. All right, so hopefully you notice no, not correct, not correct, not correct, not correct. So you count the little carets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so for correct writing sequences, we have 6. Remember, for words written, total words written, we have 8. I never really use this one, words written correctly, because RA is not a word, right? But it is counted as a group of letters and is counted as a word. This to me shows how fast they can write, but not how accurately or how correctly they can write. So I never use this method. I always use this one, correct writing sequences, but that was just me. All right, and then the last one is words spelled correctly. So we're just looking at the individual words in this case, okay? So the, cat, away, the, is blue. And it happens to be the same, 6, as up here for correct writing sequences. So again, you can use, not a combination, because you don't want to 1 week do total words written and then the next week assess correct writing sequences. But if you want to assess for all 3, you can and just say, okay, well, I'm going to keep track of how many words the student writes, just how many words written, and then maybe do a column of that. Okay, now I'm also going to look at how many correct writing sequences there are. Okay, now I'm also going to look at how many words spelled correctly. I tended to use this one more frequently, the correct writing sequences, just because for my students it seemed to show the most data. But just keep those methods in mind. Okay, so now we want to talk about some elements of writing, the pre-writing and planning. So you want to think about pre-writing, planning, composing, revising, editing, publishing. That is the whole writing process. So you can help some of your students, give them some topics. So look at figure 9-6 and apply 9-3. Some of your students with learning and behavior problems, they'll spend 30 minutes trying to come up with a topic. So you can help or allow a peer to help. I think in the textbook they show an interview, where a girl is, let me see if I can get to 9.6. I'm not going to be able to right away. Hold on. And I'll show you Powtree in just a second. So, here you go. So you could, they could have that folder, reread your idea list, ask a friend to help you, listen to others' ideas, write about what you know, write a make-believe story. So all of these things are some ways that you can help kind of guide them to a topic so they don't spend all their time, just trying to figure out a topic. Then you want to think about pre-writing. You want to model this writing process. You want to use graphic organizers. You want to show them how to sequence your idea or their ideas. You are going to have to provide some explicit instruction in this pre-writing stage. And then planning, you could teach them some of these. There are a lot of self-regulated strategies that are in the textbook. One of them is POW, pick ideas, organize notes, write and say more. One is plan, pay attention to prompt, list main ideas, add supporting details, number major points. And then there's tools such as brainstorm sheets and structured organizers. And I do want to show you figures 9-7 and 9-8 before I run out of time, because it's going to happen. And also, when I was at Penn State, Linda Mason, she used to work with Harris and Graham, and then she was at Penn State when I was there. So I got to kind of learn from one of the experts about POW and POW plus tree and all these things, and I'll show you those in just a few seconds. Oh, my bad, I skipped 9.7, y'all, because it's at the bottom. So there's a possible brainstorming sheet, right? Here's your topic, here's your setting, your problem, the order of action, and the end. So use some of the things that are provided in your textbook, because I think they could help with some students who are struggling. Here's just another brainstorming sheet. Okay, so keeping those in mind, there's also a plan think sheet, figure 9.9 and figure 9.10, and explanation organization form. So this might be something that could really help your students to be more successful writers. All right, so I'm going to stop here for part one. So come on back and we will talk about POW plus tree in part two, and then we'll talk about spelling.